challenged by this topic which was given to me. I was not expecting anything less from an IT institution, refreshing hospitality education. I only know how you refresh, your computer to get your latest grades and all that. But I think this is something which kept me thinking about the culinary education in the country, and we cannot go forward without looking back. I come from the government, half of my career has been spent in government, so we believe in driving by looking in the rear view mirror. So looking back is very, very important, but I would not like to take away the importance of culinary education in today's world. Lifestyles are such that it is not possible for people to cook at home as the families used to do earlier. There is sustainability issue very beautifully presented by Professor Ganesh a few minutes ago. We will be 10 billion strong, in next 25, 30 years. And I don't think, the land resources available to grow the way we have been growing so far. So we have to think differently. Maybe we have to produce food in the lab, or so many things we will have to do. And another important thing is, if we are not careful about refreshing culinary education, if we are not getting educated people who are professionally trained into the gastronomy field, somebody else is going to fill that gap. And there is a big deal of risk in that somebody coming in and occupying that very important space. You come across people who are experimenting now, everything in the street food you come across. There is a lot of mayonnaise in that, there is a lot of ketchup in that, and there is a lot of Amul butter there, and Amul cheese is there, and paneer is there. I don't know which direction where we actually are going. So therefore, culinary education, gastronomical education is the need of the hour. And let me come back to the point, because I am on a leash, very little time I have been given. I can speak the whole day. This kind of a hall, this is like dream coming true. I remember, speaking in IIT-Delhi, a similar hall a few years back. So the time being short, I will be completing in next 15 to 20 minutes. Culinary education in India, like culinary education, there are some other models that I have seen. We had a little interaction with an institution called Alma, which comes from the famous city of Parma, where the Parmesan cheese and Parma ham comes from. And they wanted to have a memorandum of understanding with IIT Pusa. 2019, very strongly, they mobilized Italian embassy, and we said, yes, we are ready to collaborate. Let there be exchange, let there be faculty exchange, let there be student exchange. Now, one condition that they put was, well, we do not want to learn anything but Italian cuisine. So we will come, the partnership would be one way, they would come and they would teach Italian cuisine to our people. But I said, what do we do in return? They said, no, you don't have to do anything. So I said, this is an unequal kind of a partnership we do not really want. So there are some institutions like that, but there are other institutions which are evolving. Chef Akshay, who has attended the Culinary Institute of America, which is the mecca of culinary education globally, they are going into the native cuisines, to the tribal cuisines, and they're experimenting everything, and then they are imbibing certain learning points from every nook and corner of the world, and that is the kind of institution we try to become. But in our country, culinary education, it was too much focused on the Western cuisine. I remember I have come through the similar education field. First thing that we learned about was the French cuisine. We learned about making stocks, and then we learned about making sauces, and then the soups and the garnishes and things like that. The reason for that was that our own cuisines were not documented well enough. There were not too many textbooks, written about our own cuisine. And what was available was either on French cuisine or Italian cuisine or American cuisine or something else. But we were deprived of a documented or a systematic knowledge of our own cuisine. Thankfully, when I was graduating from the institution, under the guidance of Chef Gill and Jix Kalra, they came out with that first book, Prashad Cooking with Indian Masters, and that was something, that we could really work on. And then Chef Saraswat came out with a wonderful book, on our native cuisine, and that is the first taste of our own cuisine, and a documented work on that we came to know about. Now, thankfully, now Chef Bali and other people like him, they have contributed a great deal in that, and things have become different now. So this is how the culinary education has been, and what I feel is, so far, what we have been doing is, we are going a little wider, earlier in my time, we learned about European cuisine, and only Japanese and Korean, and these were the only cuisines we were kind of covering. But now we have made the spectrum a little wider. We are talking about global cuisines. We are talking about Western global cuisine, and then we are talking about Oriental global cuisines. We are talking about something like the family tree of the cuisines. How one cuisine is related to another one. Like what is true for one cuisine, how much it is holding true for another cuisine from that family in that tree. So those kind of things are there, but what I feel is, this is like walking or running linearly. What we require is lateral thinking, as it is said. And what has emerged lately is the computational gastronomy, which thankfully, in this symposium that we are attending. Let me tell you a little bit about the background. It was Chef Gill who told me about the computational gastronomy. I think, Chef, it was 2018. And he said, there is young professor, a scientist, really bright man, and he has researched so many recipes, and he can pair, and he can predict. It is predictive that if you put these flavors and these tastes, and the dish would be, very acceptable to the people. And I visited this place. I came with some of my colleagues, and then in the second edition, I think many of my colleagues were sitting here in the auditorium. I could not be present there that day, and then COVID and all those things happened. But what I feel is, this field of knowledge, which is not available to the chefs. Before, if we did not have this much of interaction with Chef, I've started calling him Chef Bagler, but Professor Bagler, like it is not happening, it is kind of, infecting, So if it had not been for him, what we were thinking about computational gastronomy was that maybe you are going to print food in a 3D food printer. So you had those tubes, and then you were creating certain things. This is what we had in our mind, but it is a wonderful tool. And now what we have been doing in reimagining or refreshing culinary education. Culinary education, what we try to teach our people. At the moment, I have an institution. Let me come back to where I work. I have a student center, 1,200 students. I have undergraduates, graduate, and some specialized diploma programs. Graduate students, undergraduate students, they want to join consulting companies and retail companies and e-commerce companies, because that is where they are getting their kind of careers, coming. But I have got dedicated people in the culinary field, 130 students, food production and patisserie, they are specializing. 88 students, as I'm speaking, in bakery and confectionery are available. And that is my hope, right? These are the people, and we are doing everything possible to nurture them and to push them in a certain direction. So first thing that we try to make our students learn and understand is, they have to understand flavor. What is flavor? Food, thankfully, I'm so grateful, George Bernard Shaw, in his famous quote said, there is no love sincerer than the love of food. And I truly believe that. And to understand food, you have to understand, what it is doing to you. There is a physiological side, it is giving you calories, it is making your body run, it is giving you satiety, it is doing something for your mind. But I would like to go to the extent of saying that it is doing something for your soul as well. There are certain foods, you go to a temple. I went to one of the temples, Jagannath temple, where they are using the things, recipes which were handed down, they are not using any of the things that the Portuguese brought to our country. And I was fed by a priest. He cooked the food and he said, yahan jhootha nahi hota. He fed me with his own hands. And I think everything went to my soul, It was not for the mind. It was not for the body. So that is the kind of thing, the food is able to do you. Food is yourself. Food is something, which your children will become. So what you are eating today, your future of the human generation is dependent on that. And that is where we want to start from. So flavor as a multi-sensory kind of an experience, we tell our people. It is not only taste, what your tongue is doing. It is not only your eyes which is being seen by the people. It is not what your ears are hearing, right? It is not what the tongue and the wall in your mouth is experiencing. It is a mixture of everything. And when you are training people, you have to tell them to create those kind of experiences. You cannot think only in terms of seasoning. It has to be much, much beyond that. And that is what we are trying to make them understand. Point number one. Point number two is we try to make them befriend their ingredients. There is very strong input on commodities, where the things are grown, how they are processed, and how they are best to be utilized. Right? I have lived in Kerala for 5 years. The hotel I worked for was called Kabr. So मैं कब्र में 5 साल रह के आया. Oberlin myself beach resort को कब्र कहते थे for the best reasons, I had the opportunity, to go to the spice gardens, the famous spice market in Cochin. I have experienced it so many times. Every time a friend would come, on motorbikes, we would go from Trivandrum to this place and explore these markets. Recently, I went to Munnar. I stayed in an estate which is cardamom. Right? Cardamom was growing all around, and in the basement of that hotel, they had cardamom stored. So 3 days after coming to Delhi, I was smelling of only cardamom and nothing else. But the thing is, these are the kind of experiences how you use them. Spices, many people, they use spices, in a very crude kind of a manner. I would not like to demean anybody, but big chef, this Hell's Kitchen famed chef, he came and he tried to use our spices, in his particular way. And when the proof of that thing was there, people just did not like it, right? So this is not, because you have to understand what the ingredient is and how it is best to be utilized. The spices, there are so many of them. I think chefs in India, the people, they are like alchemists. They are best chemical engineers. So many flavors, when they are blending them together, your meat tastes like spices, your gravy tastes like the meat, and something else, tastes like something else. But the overall impression, that you get on you is wonderful, and it is like heavenly kind of an experience. So befriending the commodities, that is the next big thing that we are going to talk about. Flavor, like there is wonderful books written, Karen Page and Andrew Dornbach, they wrote that flavor Bible. What does very well, goes very well together. And I will give you a few examples. Like any cuisine you take, whenever you are cooking fish, you need a souring agent. If you are going to European cuisine and all, wine is doing that job for you. The wine vinegars are doing that job for you. If you go to South India, the tamarind is probably doing that job for you, or the scudam puli in Goa is doing that job for you. If you go to Nepal or in Central Asian regions, maybe it is the dried lemon which is doing that job for you, or it is maybe the chook, or which is the dehydrated or concentrated juice of lemon which is doing. But everywhere you go to, or South America, it is maybe the lemons which are doing, ceviche you are making, or different kind of things you are making. Souring agent is very, very important. You need a very pungent agent, right? In one country, it could be mustard, in another country, it could be wasabi, it could be something else. But those kind of things, there are common things which can be, measured whenever you are cooking fish. So likewise, whenever you are trying to predict something, this kind of a knowledge is very, very handy to you. And now going forward, very important thing we want our students to appreciate is the importance of temperature at which the food is served. That is very, very important. We have been taught at what temperature white wine is to be served, what temperature red wine is to be served, what temperature these ale and stout and porter would be served, and what temperature the lager would be served. There is some reason for it, because the temperature at which you are serving these beverages are the temperature at which they are fermented. That is the temperature at which they are brewed, and that is the temperature the microbes are working, beautifully on them, and they are releasing those aromas. And when you are serving it at that temperature, you are experiencing what a freshly fermented beverages would be appearing like. And likewise, in the kind of food that we are serving, there is a fad, every Indian dessert, you try to serve it cold. So there is kheer, originally to be served warm, you start serving it cold, and then you find chini kam hai kya, right? There is ice cream, you are serving it, icy cold, frozen. You only get that icy thing and sweetness, not the flavors. So that even the ice cream, good chefs, they would keep it aside, they would keep it out of the deep freezer, in the refrigerator maybe for some time, so that it comes close to zero, or maybe 1 grade above zero, so that you appreciate the vanilla in that, the strawberry or the chocolate or everything else that the flavor has been. So temperature of food, at what temperature you are serving that food is very, very important. And another important thing that I wish to share with you is that we have to think about giving some traditional values in our education. When our chefs are going, our traditional chefs, when they are cooking for a banquet or something, it is not tasting that they are doing every 5th minute, every 3rd minute they have to taste the food and tell whether everything seasoning and everything is all right or not. I have taken a look at, because traditional Indian, since chef has told about Ayurvedic cooking and traditional cooking so much, there are people who are abhorred from tasting the food when they are preparing for temple cooking or for some formal banquets. The state that I come from, in a formal banquet, a cook has to take a bath, and after that he cannot drink water, tea, smoke, and nothing. And in a particular attire he has to cook, and this person has to serve the food. And he can only taste it after everybody else has been fed, right? I did some work on this Jagannath temple cuisine, These people are fed to their fill, because while they are cooking, they should not even salivate, because it is becoming impure and it cannot be offered to Lord Jagannath anymore. So those are the kind of things, I have, in my first institution in Nepal, I fired a chef, an Oberoi School of Management it was called then, because his international exposure, he would taste and then it goes back into the pot. I said, you are not doing it in my institute. This is not what I want to teach my students, right? I prescribed that everybody carried a parfait spoon here and 2 spoon thing that we did. So these little things are where the difference we try to do. I think I'm close to the time which has been allowed to me. Very important thing I would like to share is, there are so many points that I have here, but first things first, or important things first, what I feel is culinary education can only be complete when you are giving people an opportunity to practice what they are learning. And I will tell you, how I have been trying to do that. 2018 started in 2019. PM's constituency was being connected to Delhi. The IIT-CTC, which came out with this train, they wanted to serve airline kind of meals, on the train, right? So they wanted breakfast, which would have, croissants, and which would have, cutlets and omelets and fried eggs and things like that. None of the vendors, agreed, and many people said it is just not possible. And we were given this challenge because my predecessor was on the board of IRCTC. So they gave us a challenge. They said, hey, can you do something about it? And we looked at the place which is available for a pantry on that car. And we said, well, we will do it. And when Train 19 started in February 2019, Train 18 it is called, we served the breakfast, 1200 breakfasts every day. We accepted the challenge only for 3 months, but we ended up doing it for 6 months. And third month onwards, one vendor comes to us and sees how we are doing it, and all done by our students. We did not enlist any outside help. 1200 breakfasts on a train, cooking overnight and serving, in the morning. 4 o'clock it was picked up from the institution, right? And whatever proceeds came, our hostels got new large screen televisions and things like that. Another important thing is, at the moment as we are speaking, our diploma bakery and confectionery people are going into their exams. Their examination is not making a puff paste or a shoe paste or something. Their examination goes week long, and over the week they have to prepare everything that they want to prepare, and they have to prepare it. And then we have got an attached shop which is called the bake shop of IIT Pusa, and they have to make it available for a price there. And the marking is how much of their product would be selling, right? So this is the kind of learning which we want our students to have. I went to a Northeast food show in Shillong. Wonderful learning was there. I came across a few people, some small time bakery institute from Coimbatore. They are called JM Bakeries, right? And they had a small oven, small dough mixing machine, plenty mixture, and they were continuously in batches, small batches. They were making breads, and they were only selling filled buns and some cookies. And what they were doing, it was a farmer's market. They were going around and they will source the ingredients, some vegetables, some fruit. Certain fruits we did not even know their names of. We've not seen those fruits ever before. And they brought it, they made a jam or a compote or a concentrate out of that, or puli out of that. And they are filling their donuts, with that then and there. And the things would, sell like hotcakes. Right? So the time it is half gone, then they are going a second round to pick up something else. I think this is the kind of education, culinary education, our students need. 3 days back in Gwalior Park, there was a festival. Old friend of mine from IIT-Delhi days, my batchmate, she lives there. She said, can some of the young chefs come? Because we want fake kind of environment. We said these DBC students, we said whatever you want, you can carry it from the institution. So 3 stalls they took, and they were the star of that fete which was there in the Gwalior Park. So much so, the local MLA, they gave me a call that you are doing a good job, training your students. So I think proof of the pudding is in the taste. And the taste of any education is how the graduates are performing in the real world. So I think if there are any questions, there was a lot of ground I wanted to cover, but then being in time is very, very important, right?
Thank you.
So thank you very much. And before thanking you all, I would like to put my appreciation on record. And I'm really very serious. I'm very enthused by your offer of collaborating with IIT Pusa. I've said in my beginning of my talk that this is maybe a little thinking for us. We are in preparation for taking off, running faster in a linear line is not really going to help us. And with this shot in the arm, hopefully the institution will see new. Thank you very much.